oninit. So today I want to show you how you can deploy your application as a web application into any server. So Angular, as you know, it is a single page application. Everything it generates, the artifacts it generate, output, everything is basically presented, basically shown on your web browser as a single page. So it means that if you have to make your application available to the end user, you will make it as a common web application. There is no special any requirements or any dependency you will have when you have to deploy your Angular application. So it is applicable to all the web application. There are multiple frameworks for developing the web application. You have React, you have Drupal, you have Laravel, or there can be a many. So the factor which is common for all the web application is that uh, ultimately it is rendered in the browser as a HTML, CSS, and the JavaScript. So in this video, I want to show you Angular application, how you can build it so that it will be generating artifacts that are deployable. So until now, we have seen our tutorials where we were creating an Angular application in an Angular project, and we were running that on the dev server. So we are going to do few steps different this time. And first, let's make this clear. In this video, I'm going to show how you can deploy it on the Node.js. Using a Node.js, there is a library of Node.js called Express, and Express library allows you to create your own web server, and over it, you can deploy any web application. You can create the REST endpoints that is typically used for creating the REST APIs, but you can use it for deploying any web application, any dynamic web application. So I will show the demonstration using the Express.js library in the Node.js environment, but it is essential to know that in the real time when we do a deployment, we don't use a Node.js directly. We have few more things there. Of course, the Node.js you will need there. You will need to have an Express server, and but when you deal with the infrastructure level, when you deal with things like virtual machines, containers, Dockers, so there you cannot keep only one instance of Express.js and make everything your processes, your backend processes, APIs running on only one process. And today we live in the generation where the cloud is very in demanding, and the IT companies they want to migrate to a cloud platform, cloud architecture, because there are many benefits they get in terms of the maintenance of their infrastructure and other factor. So if you want your application to be running on the cloud and you want it to be supported, you need to have few more things set up on your machine. So those are the nginx, Kubernetes, Docker. So these are the things that whenever you will work on a real project, you will get to know. So I've been working on Angular for around 6 years now, and every project I work, the backend was different. It's dependent on the technology that project which is suitable for that project. But I have observed these things which are present on the infra level, like the nginx, Kubernetes, and Docker. These things always remain same. So the gist of the this slide is that you will need things, you will need a set of things, I would say, that will be responsible for hosting your backend, and that you need in order to make your application more performant. You need to do a load balancing, you need to make it available more, you need to increase its availability, you want to reduce the downtime. So these are the things that you need to be familiar with, because this is something, as a real world, when you are deploying an application which is very huge in a scale, that thousands or lakhs of users, so you need to make your architecture which is very strong, and that for that you use these things. So these are the steps that we'll learn. We need to create an Angular project first, then we need to build an Angular project. If you have watched my previous tutorial, you must be familiar with these first two steps, that how we create an Angular project and how we build it. Throughout my last videos, I have shown you that how you can do a build. For that, we can use a ng build command, which is basically use only a build. But if you have to also run it in your development environment, then we use a ng serve. So ng serve is a combination of your ng build, and serving basically is a process or a part where you deploy or just run it on your local environment. Then we have to see what is the difference between the usual process that we follow when we just run application or development environment using ng-serve, and is it the same that when we'll deploy it on the production. So that is not actually the same, and we need to we'll try to understand that why it is different and what are the things that actually uh, we need to have in order to make our Angular projects artifacts to be more compatible, to be more precise to a production or make our artifacts to a production ready. Then I want to show you how you can create a simple web server using Express library, which is very popular in the Node.js. And then ultimately we'll do an integration of this Express library and the deployable artifacts of Angular, and we'll run it on any port, whichever intended port you want to run. Having the project which I created in my last tutorial. So I have this Angular project created. If you're not aware how to create Angular project, we create that using ng new command, and anything like you can specify the name of your project. So that's a syntax that you can use to create. And you can see that my application is already compiled, and it is running on the 4200 port. So this is my localhost 4200, and I can see that application is there, which is running. It is very simple code. I was just trying to demonstrate the few concepts in in my last tutorials, and that's why I just created a very simple code. uh, I guess I was trying to demonstrate the use of materials, form elements, and that's why I created this calendar widgets. And there, if you can pick any date, it will show that, which is a birth date actually. If you pick any date, it will show that if that particular date is your birth date, what is your current age, and it calculates that. For that, it shows it in the years, days, and blah blah. So it was just a demonstration. I was explaining some concept, and the same application, same code I will use. And this application, I want to show you how you can generate the deployable artifacts, and then you can host it on any web server. In this tutorial specifically, I am going to use Express server, but it's very important for you to remember there is no limitation like on which server you can host. It is framework independent. It doesn't matter you code in the React, you code in Angular, or any other framework you like, you code in a Vue, Backbone.js, doesn't matter. Ultimately, every framework gives you artifacts, that is HTML, CSS, JavaScript, as a web artifact. So whatever framework you use, if you have those things, if you have those generated artifacts, you can deploy it on any web server. So let's come to the VS Code, and this is the output of my ng-serve. When I do ng-serve, it builds the project, and then it what it does is it just uses its own HTTP server, which comes with Angular core, and then it just deploy it browser. And this is what I wanted to show. These are the files: main.js, polyfills, runtime, vendor, and this is my index.html. So this is the output that I want, and this is what I was talking about. Every web project needs to have this, some kind of a JS, CSS, and some HTML, and that's where you can render your that's what are the building blocks of any web application. So in Angular, this is what the structure is followed. There is a body tag, there is an app root, which we know, like this is the app component, which will come from here. And if you go here and see, there's a selector called app root, and the app component is a top level component, and all the components basically are under it. So if you are familiar with the DOM concept, this app root lies at the top, and after that, you have all your components under it. So it's a hierarchy basically. Then you can see there are a bunch of scripts, multiple scripts, and they are included here. So those are nothing but the runtime. So these scripts are nothing but the scripts which you are seeing here. So the runtime, polyfill, style, vendor, all the scripts are included here. Okay, so now the understanding is, in order to make our application run, we need to have these files. And if I have to deploy my application, I need to have these files. But if I do this process through ng serve, I know that like the artifacts are generated, and they are hosted on the on the local host using HTTP server, which is internal to Angular, but I don't have a way to see them here. So if I want to see like where is my main uh, .js, I couldn't see it in my project. If I would search for the polyfills JS, I couldn't find that here. If so, the thing is, whenever I do an ng serve, the artifacts are generated, but they are not present in the project. So in order to get those artifacts accessible to me in my project director, I need to execute a command in a different way. So for that, we use a ng build. So if we just do a ng build, it will do an compilation of Angular project, and it will create the artifacts. But whenever we want to deploy our application in the production, we want to specify an additional configuration there, which is we specify that we want to build application, which will be for which we are targeting it to be hosted to be deployed in the production. So for that, we need to specify an additional configuration. And that configuration is, you need to specify as a production, you need to pass a value as a production to this configuration. And if you specify that, the build the process which runs a build, it knows that it needs to generate artifacts which will be deployed in the production, so that it applies an additional stuff on it. The additional stuff is it minifies the file, it makes your application to be more fault tolerant to the runtime exceptions, and it want to reduce the bundle size of the Angular. Bundle size is like the overall size of application, so that it will be more quick, and it will give a good experience to the user when you use it. So those things it internally handles. If we specify the flag, if you specify the configuration as a production, it does that. And there is one more thing that I want to put here, which is to output hyphen hashing to none. I'll tell you what this flag does once this ng build process is completed. Let's hit enter, and the typo I did, it should be none. So it will take some time in order to do a build. Remember, this build, it takes a little time, and it's obviously slower than the ng serve, because ng serve, it's a development a type of build where it doesn't check few things, but in case of the production it takes a little more time. And since my application is very small, it happened very quickly. Okay, but yeah, the time required for this process, it completely depend on how big your application is, how much dependency you have. A critical factor, I would say, is your size of node module. So if you have too many packages in your application, you have a lot of dependencies, you are using so many things, it ultimately going to impact the bundle size. So that's a one good practice. We as a developer, even in my current role in my current project, we have very strict criteria, very strict guideline that we don't add too many node modules, too many packages. As a tech lead, I need to ensure that the developers who are working under me, we don't add the dependencies, too many dependencies, and so that ultimately we get an app which is uh, loaded with so many things, it's bulk up and it's slow. So you have to be careful about it, because that's a part, size of a node module, that's a part that determines the overall performance of your application. So you can see that there are the files which are generated, and if you see the names of files are main.js, style, CSS, those are the same. And here's where this additional thing which are specified in this command comes into a picture. So output hashing none. So if I don't pass this flag, I see an additional hash code, some mixture of characters hash code that is appended in the name of this file. So main, some hashcode.js, styles, some hashcode.js. So I don't want that in the name of the files which are generated. That's why I pass output hashing none. And this is a difference. See, the raw size was 689, this was 275 KB, and this was 902 bytes. And when it did a compilation, it says that estimated transfer size would be 152 KB. So it has reduced the size, and ultimately if you see the total size of the uh, application was around 1 MB, I can say, and now it's 191 KB. So that's pretty good cutting, or pretty good slippage in terms of the size you can see. And that's where if you pass a configuration production, it reduces the size. And in a language and in the world of a web application, the less is the size of your web application, more robust, more fast, more performant it is. So you can see there is a one new folder generated, that is dist, and under that I can see another folder, namely the application of my it is the name of my Angular application, and inside that I can see these other things present. So these things are my artifacts, and this is what I would need in order to deploy my application on the node.js. So next step, as it is there in our slide, that I need to create a server using Express library in a node.js. So for that, let's install a Express library first. And this time I want to create a different directory, and I will call it, I want to keep it outside actually. So what I will do is I will open this in a file explorer, and new folder, server, let's call it. I will close it, and I'll create a new file, server.js. Since we are using a node.js, that's why it's a JavaScript. And let's do one thing. Uh, I will open a different PowerShell probably, yeah. And I will go to the server folder. It was in, okay, I think I need to go to Angular material, then server. Okay, then I will create a npm project. So if you don't know npm, and it is a command that we use in order to create any Node.js application. Angular itself is built in the Node.js. So remember, Angular is also a Node.js project because it uses a Node.js. It's written in the TypeScript, but TypeScript you also need a Node.js to run the TypeScript. So Node.js is a runtime environment that allows you to run the JavaScript outside of your browser. So that's a fundamental. So you need to have a Node.js. That's the reason you need to have a Node.js for your Angular framework to work. So we'll create a Node.js project using npm init. I can pass any name. Let's call it simple express server or just express server. Version description. This is simple web server, simple HTTP web server. Entry point is server.js. This is a file that I want to execute. Command for now, I don't want to specify any test commands because I'm not going to write a test cases, but we write a test cases in many cases where we want to like execute the things in automated ways. Git repository. For now, I don't want it. I just wanted a local code, so I will just skip it. Just hit enter. Uh, just put my name there in the author. Licenses, you can specify whatever you want. Is this okay? So this is the output that it will generate in the package.json. So if it looks okay, I will say yes, and I see the package JSON is created. Next thing, I want to install the express, so I will hit this command npm install express, and this will download the express. So you can see that it has added 57 packages, and this must have also updated the package log file, so and the package file. So you can see in the dependencies I have the express as a dependency, which is a new entry made here, and the log file is a temporary file that you have. It is the difference between package.json and the log file is that log file ensures the dependency version. So what are the dependencies? So in this case, to make you understand about the dependencies, so let's see what we did here is we just hit a npm I express. So it's a technically only one package I wanted, but in order to express to run, it has a dependency on a few other things, and those dependencies it also downloads. So that's why you can see that it has added a 57 packages. So express has a dependency on other packages, and that's why other packages are also added here. And there are two types of dependencies. One is your normal dependency that you need uh, for your application, irrespective whether it is a development or in the production, you need that. And there's another type of dependency which is dev dependency, and dev dependencies you need only if you are if you want to test few things or want to do a development. So the dev dependencies you don't need in the production. So yeah, that's a type of dependencies you have. Now, since we have the Express web server, we'll write a code for the uh, making the web server up. Okay, so let's start writing the script, writing a code for our web server. So, so first thing first, I will import the express. So this is a syntax const express. I created a object, and I just imported the express, require express. And since I have installed that, it would take the express from my node modules. So after that, I also need a path. Path is a library which you need if you have to access your file system, if you want to read the files, you want to go inside the folders, read the folder. So that's where you need a path library. And then the line number 4 basically helps you to create a new web server. So the application here, the app equals to express, this created a new instance of web server. Now, what I want to do after that, once I have web server, I want to create a listener. That listener will allow me to read the requests which are coming over HTTP. So in this case, am telling that to use an static method, okay, and inside that I want to read the content from the Angular dist folder, and that I want to return back to an HTTP request. And if there is anything route that comes to my web server, I want to put that, I want to take it, and I want to route it to the index HTML file in my disk. So index HTML is like an landing page. It is only single file, as we saw. It's only single file in HTML file in the Angular generated artifacts, and inside that we have a bunch of other things. So that's a code for reading the dist folder content and passing it to a request. But the important thing, we want to create a web server up. So this is a code for that. Uh, like I have created the server, and I'm asking to my script that if there is anything environment port passed in the argument, I can pass the arguments to a script. But if that is not there, then take the 3000 as a default port and listen on that port. So I need to change few things here. Instead of this dist, I need to give an actual path of my test, which is this one, and similarly I will do here calendar app slash test and the index.html. Now let's run the script using node server.js, and let's see what happens. So it says the server started on the port 3000, and if I go to the port 3000, I get this error which says that your material calendar app test, and that is because the path I specified is not correct. It should be the test, and after that again I have a calendar, again I have a calendar app, uh, and similar goes here. I have a calendar app slash index HTML, and this time, yeah, I can see that my Angular application is running now. So this was the demonstration of how we can deploy Angular as a web application on any server, any web server. Now, after understanding how we can deploy Angular application, we need to know that when we deploy application, it has to be supportable on multiple instances. So what I mean by instances is uh, in the real applications, we put an applications into different, like we maintain the different versions of the application or the different variants of application. Like one is a development where the developer people will do their work. Another can be a QA where testing team and the QA use it for their testing needs. Another can be a UAT where user acceptance testing is carried out, where actual user test it. Then you can have the main one, which is production, which is your actual end user in the real scenario they are using it. So these are the different variants of a same application. For that, Angular has a feature which is environment, and for the creating an environment, there is a command which is ng generate environments. So I think in my case already had the environment created under the source, that's why it skipped it. But basically what it does is it creates a environments directly under that. It will create a two files. So you can see that environment ts is a one, then environment development.ts is another. So you can maintain as many files you want. Like this, I can create another file. Like if I just do a copy paste quickly, I can do one file which will be production.ts, and similarly I can do for the any environment. So if you have n number of environments, you will have n files there. But the important thing is that we specify the properties of the environments in this file. So this flag like production is true, then the which API endpoint I want to use. So that's all for this video, and I hope you may find this helpful. Thank you.